I'm M-Train, and my parents stole my future to pay for my brother's mistakes. Before I tell you about the morning, they woke up to a completely empty house and a reality heck that hit them harder than a fat train. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I have seen how far this story reaches. I stared at it. I refreshed the page. $12.43. I clicked on the transaction history. That morning at 9 a.m. there was a wire transfer. Withdrawal $40,000. Destination. External account ending in 8821. I knew that account number. It belonged to my father, Robert. My joint account, the one I had opened when I was 22 and helping them manage their bankruptcy. I had never taken my name off it, and I had never taken their names off mine because, well, they were my parents. I trusted them. That was the first rule of risk analysis I broke. Never leave a vulnerability exposed, even if it looks like family. Mason. Emily touched my arm. What's wrong? You've gone pale. There's a glitch. I lied. I pulled out my emergency credit card, the one with the high interest rate I never used, and paid the deposit. Let's get you home. I drove Emily to her apartment in silence. Couldn't tell her. Not yet. I had to verify the betrayal first. I had to see their faces. I drove to my parents' house. Well, the house they lived in. It was a nice 2-story place in a good suburb. I still had my old room there, the one I stayed in on weekends when I came over to fix their gutters or handle their taxes. I had bought almost everything inside those walls. When I walked in, they were in the living room. My dad, Robert, was sitting in the leather recliner I had bought him for Christmas last year. My mom, Linda, was on the sofa. And there, sitting on the floor playing a video game on the PS5 I had lent him, was Caleb. Caleb, my younger brother, 28 years old, and he had never held a job for longer than 6 months. He was the creative one, the free spirit. In reality, he was a leech with a gambling problem and a taste for trouble. They looked up when I entered. They didn't look guilty. They looked relieved. Mason, Dad said, muttering. You're early for dinner. Where is it? I asked. My voice was calm. Too calm. Where's what? Mom asked, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. She was fiddling with a coaster on the coffee table. The wedding fund, $40,000. It's gone. It's in your account. Silence stretched in the room. Caleb paused his game. He didn't turn around. We had to borrow it, Dad said finally. He said it with the casual tone of someone borrowing a cup of sugar. It was an emergency. An emergency, I repeated. Did the house burn down? Did someone need surgery? It's Caleb, Mom said, her voice trembling. He got into some trouble. Bad people, Mason, loan sharks. They said if he didn't pay by noon today, they were going to hurt him. I looked at Caleb. He finally turned around. He didn't look like someone who had just escaped death. He looked annoyed that his game was interrupted. It was a business deal gone wrong, bro. Caleb said, Crypto, you wouldn't understand. High risk, high reward. I just got unlucky. So you stole my money, I said. Money for my wedding. Money Emily and I worked for. We didn't steal it. Dad snapped, his face turning red. We borrowed it. Your family. Family helps family. You have a good job. You're a damn analyst. You make more in a month than Caleb makes in a year. You can earn it back. Earn it back. I felt the room spinning. It took me 5 years to save that. 5 years. We'll pay you back, Mom said quickly. Once Caleb's next venture takes off. When? I asked. When has Caleb ever paid anyone back? Don't talk about your brother like that. Dad stood up. He's trying. Not everyone is a corporate robot like you, Mason. Some people have dreams. We had to save him. Let him get his legs broken. You could have asked me, I said. You could have called. You would have said no. Caleb interjected. He smirked. That little entitled smirk that he had worn since we were kids. You always lecture me about responsibility. We didn't have time for a lecture. I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the leather recliner. I paid for the 65 and 4K TV on the wall. I paid for the dining table in the next room. I saw 3 people who felt absolutely entitled to the sweat off my brow. They didn't just take my money. They took my respect. They took my boundaries and set them on fire. So that's it, I asked. It's gone, it's gone. Dad said, stop making a scene. We can't undo it. Just postpone the wedding. Emily is a sensible girl. She'll understand. Postpone the wedding. Just like that, something inside me snapped. But it wasn't a loud snap. It was a quiet metallic click. Like a vault door locking shut. I realized then that screaming wouldn't work. Crying wouldn't work. They didn't respect me. They respected my wallet. They respected the infrastructure I provided. Okay, I said. Dad blinked. Okay. Yeah, I said. I shrugged. I forced my shoulders to drop. I forced my face to go slack. If it was life or death, I get it. I'm upset, obviously, but I get it. Mom let out a huge breath. Oh, thank God. I told you, Robert. I told you Mason would understand. He's a good boy. I'm tired, I said. I'm going to go to my room and lie down. I need to process this. Sure. Dad sat back down, instantly relaxing. Dinner is at 6. Mom's making meatloaf. I walked past Caleb. He didn't even look up. He had unpaused his game. Thanks, bro, he muttered. I owe you one. No, I whispered to myself as I walked down the hall. You don't owe me anything because I'm collecting today. I went into my room and closed the door. I locked it. I sat on the bed I bought, and pulled out my phone. I didn't call Emily. I called Elijah. Elijah wasn't just my best friend. He was a shark of a lawyer specializing in property law. Mason, Elijah answered on the second ring. You sound like you're at a funeral. I might be, I said. They took it, Eli. The whole wedding fund, the 40 grand. You're kidding. Gone. Wired to pay off Caleb's gambling debts or whatever lie they told me. I told you to cut that joint access years ago. Elijah sighed. What do you want to do, Sue? It's civil, but since your name was on the account. No lawsuits yet, I said. I want to execute the contingency plan, the house clause. There was a silence on the other end. Then I heard Elijah tap something on a keyboard. The owner's occupancy clause. Mason, that's nuclear. That's immediate eviction. If you do that, there's no going back. I know, I said. Prepare the paperwork. I want it served tomorrow. Done. Elijah said. Anything else? Yeah, call Carter. Tell him I need the trucks tonight, AM. Trucks, plural, plural. I said, I'm not just taking my name off the lease, Eli. I'm taking everything I ever paid for. I hung up. I lay back on the pillow. I could hear the sounds of the game Caleb was playing in the living room. Explosions, gunfire. He was having a blast. I looked around the room. I had renovated this whole house. I had insulated the walls. I had paid for the HVAC system. I was the invisible foundation that held their lives up, and they had just taken a sledgehammer to me. I checked my watch. 5:30 p.m. I had 9 hours until the movers arrived. I stood up and started packing my clothes quietly, methodically. They wanted me to be the good boy. They wanted me to be the safety net. They forgot that a safety net only works if the people falling actually appreciate that you're catching them. If they start cutting the ropes, eventually the net falls. And when this net fell, it was going to drag the whole house down with it. Dinner was surreal. We sat around the oak dining table. Solid wood imported, cost me $2,500 3 years ago, and ate meatloaf. Mom chattered about the neighbors. Dad complained about the government. Caleb ate with his mouth open, scrolling on his phone. Nobody mentioned the $40,000. It was as if the conversation earlier hadn't happened. They had already absolved themselves. In their minds, the crisis was over. Mason fixed it. Mason absorbed the blow. Life goes on. So, Dad said, wiping gravy off his chin, since the wedding is delayed, maybe we can look at upgrading the patio this summer. The wood is rotting. I chewed my food slowly. Maybe, I said. And I need a new car, Caleb added. This old Civic is embarrassing. If I'm going to be a crypto influencer, I need to look the part. One thing at a time, sweetie. Mom cooed at him. Let your brother recover first. I almost choked on my water. They were already spending my future earnings. I was nothing more than a resource to them. A walking ATM with feelings they could toggle on and off. I'm feeling sick, I said, standing up. I'm going to bed early. Do the dishes first, Caleb asked. I looked at him. No, I walked away. That was the first no. Felt small, but it was heavy. I spent the night awake. At 2:05 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Carter. We are at the staging area down the street. Lights off. Carter ran a logistics and moving company. He owed me a favor from when I helped him restructure his business loans. He was discreet, fast, and didn't ask questions. I crept out of my room. The house was silent. Dad's snoring rumbled from the master bedroom upstairs. Caleb was passed out on the sofa in the living room, drooling on a cushion. I unlocked the front door and flashed my phone light twice. 2 large black trucks rolled silently to the curb. The engines were cut immediately. 6 guys in dark uniforms hopped out. They wore soft-soled shoes. Quiet as mice, Carter whispered, appearing at the door. He was a giant of a man. What's the manifest? I handed him the clipboard I had prepared weeks ago just in case. Anything with a green sticker on the back or anything on this list. Start with the big stuff downstairs, the kid on the couch. Carter gestured to Caleb. Leave him, but take the couch. It was a masterclass in surgical removal. Carter's team lifted Caleb, still asleep, and gently placed him on the floor. Then, they silently carried the $3,000 Italian leather sofa out the door. Next went the TV. They unscrewed the mount from the wall. The wall looked naked and scarred without it. Then the dining table, the chairs, the artwork in the hallway, the rug. Kitchen, I whispered. We went into the kitchen. I pointed. The fridge is mine. The dishwasher is mine. The microwave. The coffee machine. The fridge. Carter raised an eyebrow. It's full of food. Empty the food into trash bags. Leave the bags. Take the fridge. They worked fast. Within 45 minutes, the ground floor was a shell. It echoed. It smelled different, less like a home, more like an abandoned warehouse. Upstairs, Carter asked. Just my room, I said. And the hallway console. Leave their bedroom. I'm not a monster. They need a bed to sleep in so they can wake up fresh for the shock. My room was cleared in 10 minutes. My desk, my computer, my clothes, my books, everything that made me me. When the last box was loaded, I stood in the center of the living room. It was 4 a.m. Caleb was still snoring on the floor, curled up in a ball on the carpet. Using a throw pillow I had decided to leave behind as an act of mercy, I pulled out a notepad. I wrote a note. I didn't want it to be long. I didn't want it to be emotional. I wanted it to be a transaction record. Dear Mom and Dad, regarding the $40,000 withdrawal for Caleb's emergency, I have liquidated my personal assets within the residence to recover a portion of the loss. The market value of the furniture, appliances, and electronics I purchased over the last 5 years totals approximately $32,000. I am writing off the remaining $8,000 as a stupid tax for trusting you. Don't call me. Don't come to my office. We are even. Mason and I taped the note to the wall where the TV used to be. It was the only place they would definitely look. I walked out the front door. The cool night air hit my face, felt like oxygen, felt like freedom. I climbed into my car. Carter gave me a thumbs up from the truck cab. They pulled away. I didn't look back. I drove straight to Emily's apartment. She woke up when I keyed in. She sat up terrified. Mason, what time is it? What happened? I sat on the edge of the bed. I felt the adrenaline crash. My hands started shaking. I left, I said. I left them, Em, and I took everything. What do you mean they stole the wedding fund? I finally confessed. 40 grand gone. Emily gasped, covering her mouth. Oh my God, Mason. But I got about 30 grand worth of stuff back, I said, a dry, humorless laugh escaping me. I emptied the house, Em. They're gonna wake up in an empty shell. Emily didn't scold me. She didn't tell me I was harsh. She hugged me. She held me while I shook. Good, she whispered fiercely. Good, we didn't sleep. We drank coffee and watched the sun come up. At 7:30 a.m., my phone started buzzing. Incoming call. Mom, I declined it. Incoming call. Dad declined. Incoming call. Caleb declined. Then the text started. Mom, Mason, where's the fridge? Dad, have you lost your mind? The police are on their way. Caleb. Bro, WDF, where's my console? I silenced the phone. Are you going to answer? Emily asked. No, I said. Not until I have the leverage locked in. What leverage? I haven't told you everything about the house, I said. About who actually owns it. Emily looked confused. Your parents own it. They've lived there for 30 years. They lived there for 30 years, I corrected. But they lost it 5 years ago. I bought it. I own the deed. I own the mortgage. They are just guests. Emily's eyes widened. You own the house through an LLC, I explained. I set it up to protect their pride. They pay rent that is actually $0. But the lease agreement has a clause about... I pulled a folder out of my bag. I'm not just taking the furniture, Emily. I'm evicting them. Sounded cruel. I knew how it sounded. Evicting your elderly parents and your brother. But then I remembered the bridal shop. I remembered insufficient funds. I remembered them sitting in my chairs, eating my food, telling me to postpone the happiest day of my life so Caleb could pay off a bookie. Do it, Emily said. Her eyes were hard. She was the daughter of a judge. She knew justice when she saw it. I need to go to work, I said, standing up. I need to look normal. If they show up there, security will handle it. Be careful, she said. I drove to work. The messages kept flooding in. Dad, you ungrateful brat. I'm calling the cops. Dad, the cops said it's a civil matter because you have receipts. Damn you, Mason. Mom, how are we supposed to make coffee? How are we supposed to eat? I read that last one and almost laughed. How are you supposed to eat? The same way I was supposed to pay for a wedding with $12 in my account. You figure it out. At 10 a.m., I got a notification from my doorbell camera, the one I had installed at their front door. It was the only piece of tech I hadn't taken specifically so I could watch the fallout. I opened the app on my phone. The video feed showed the front porch. Dad was pacing back and forth wearing his bathrobe. He looked disheveled. He was shouting into his phone. He took the damn stove, officer. No, I don't have the receipt for the stove. He bought it, but it's my house. I zoomed in. I could see the panic in his eyes. It wasn't just anger, it was fear. The fear of a man who suddenly realizes he has no control. Then a car pulled up in the driveway, a sleek black sedan. I didn't recognize it. A man in a suit stepped out. He wasn't a cop. He looked like a collector. He walked up to Dad. Dad stopped shouting. He shrank back. Mr. Robert, the man asked. Yes, Dad's voice cracked. We need to talk about Caleb's outstanding balance. The $40,000 was a good start. But there's the matter of the interest. My blood ran cold. The $40,000 wasn't the whole debt. It was just the interest. I recorded the clip. This was evidence. This was proof that my parents weren't just victims of Caleb. They were active participants in a black hole of debt that was going to swallow everything. If I hadn't pulled my money or my furniture out, it would have all gone to this guy eventually. Anyway, I closed the app. I had work to do and I had a lawyer to meet. For the next 3 days, I was a ghost. I stayed at Emily's. I routed all calls from my family to a voicemail box that I never checked. I blocked them on social media. I told the security guards at my office building, a gleaming tower in the financial district, that my parents and brother were on a do not admit list. I provided photos. The first time Dad tried to storm the lobby, 2 guards twice his size escorted him out. He screamed about filial piety and ungrateful children until they threatened to arrest him for trespassing. It was humiliating, yes, but humiliation was a necessary tool. Now, meanwhile, I was trying to rebuild the wedding from the ashes. We can do a backyard thing, Emily suggested over dinner. We were eating takeout noodles because we were technically poor again. My parents have that nice garden. No, I said firmly, we are not downgrading because of them. I will work double shifts. I will consult on the side. We are having the wedding we planned. Mason, it's just a party. It's not just a party as a statement. It's the start of our life. I am not starting our life in a deficit because Caleb decided to gamble. I was angry. The anger wasn't fading. It was hardening into a cold resolve. On Thursday, I met Elijah at a coffee shop near my office. He slid a manila envelope across the table. You're not going to like this, Elijah said. He didn't touch his latte. What is the eviction stalled? No, the eviction notice is ready to be served. This is about the debt. I had a private investigator look into Caleb's business partners. I opened the envelope. Photos. Grainy photos of Caleb coming out of a bar, Caleb arguing with a guy in a leather jacket, and then a police report, DUI. I read hit and run property damage 3 months ago. Elijah explained Caleb got drunk, stole your dad's car, the old Ford, and smashed into a parked luxury SUV, a Porsche Cayenne, a Porsche. I rubbed my temples. The owner of the Porsche agreed not to press criminal charges if Caleb paid for the damages and pain and suffering immediately. That's the debt does not loan sharks. Mason, it's a settlement to keep Caleb out of jail. I stared at the paper. So, the scary story about broken legs fabricated by your parents to get you to panic and agree to the money being gone. They played you. I felt a surge of nausea. They lied. They concocted a story about violent criminals to manipulate me into covering up Caleb's crime. They were protecting him from the consequences of his own actions using my life savings. And the guy I saw on the doorbell cam, I asked, probably the lawyer or a representative for the Porsche owner collecting the installment. The 40 grand probably just covered the repairs. They likely still owe more for the hush money aspect. I slammed the folder shut. They chose a criminal over their honest son. They chose the path of least resistance. Elijah said, you were the bank. Caleb was the baby. Now about the house. Serve it. I said, Mason, are you sure? The L sounds. Yes, but they have squatters' rights arguments potentially. Could get ugly. Serve it, I repeated. But not yet. I want to serve it when it hurts the most, when they think they've won. When is that? The rehearsal dinner, I said. Next Friday. Elijah whistled low. That's cold. They crashed my financial life. I'm going to crash their false reality. The rest of the week was a blur of work. I took on 3 new risk assessment audits. I worked 18 hours a day. I needed the money, yes, but I also needed the distraction. Emily's parents, the Devises, came into town on Saturday. Her father, Judge Davis, was a stern but fair man. Her mother, Martha, was kind but sharp. We sat down for brunch. They knew the wedding fund was gone, but they didn't know the full details. We can chip in, Judge Davis said, cutting his steak. We have savings. No, I said immediately. Sir, I appreciate it, but this is my mess. I will fix it. It's not your mess, son, he said, looking at me over his glasses. It's a crime. Have you filed a police report? Not yet, I said. I'm handling it internally. Don't let internal become infernal, he warned. Family rot spreads if you don't cut it out. You didn't know how right he was. Sunday night, I got a text from Caleb. Caleb, hey bro, look, I'm sorry. Mom is crying all the time. Dad is selling his golf clubs to buy food. We have no TV. Sucks here to bring back the fridge. The food just goes bad in the cooler. I stared at the screen. No, I'm sorry. I stole your money. I'm sorry. I'm uncomfortable. I typed back, sell the PS5. Oh wait, you can't. It's mine. I blocked him again. Monday came. The notice to quit documents were drafted. Elijah had done a masterful job. The documents laid out the ownership structure of the house clearly. Owner MJR Holdings LLC. Tenant Robert and Linda Roberts. Lease status unknown. Violation. Theft of lenders was personal property valued at $40,000. Remedy. Immediate eviction. I held the papers in my hand. They felt heavy. This was the house I grew up in. I remembered playing catch in the yard. I remembered Christmas mornings, but then I remembered the feeling of being the backup plan, the feeling of being the utility bill payer. They didn't see me as a son, they saw me as utility. And utilities get cut off when you don't pay the bill. I called Elijah, change of plans, don't mail it, bring it to the rehearsal dinner. I want to hand it to them personally. You think they'll show up? Oh, they'll show up. I said they need money. They'll come to the dinner to make a scene to guilt trip me in front of Emily's rich parents, hoping I'll cave and write them a check to save face. I know their playbook, and when they do, we burn the playbook. The week leading up to the rehearsal dinner felt like the calm before a hurricane. The air was thick with static. My parents had stopped trying to call me. That was suspicious. Silence from narcissists usually means they are plotting. I checked the doorbell camera periodically. They were selling things. I saw Dad selling the lawnmower, an old one I hadn't taken. I saw Mom selling some jewelry. They were desperate. Good. Desperation clarifies priorities. Tuesday, I got a call from my boss. Mr. Henderson, Mason, can you come to my office? I walked in. Henderson looked uncomfortable. He slid a letter across his desk. We received this via certified mail, he said. I picked it up. It was a letter from my father, handwritten to the management of Apex Analytics. I am writing to inform you that your employee, Mason Roberts, has abandoned his elderly parents in a time of crisis, stolen their household appliances, and left them in destitution. Is this the kind of moral character Apex represents? We demand you garnish his wages to repay the TDOs, his family. My face burned. I felt heat rising up my neck. They were trying to get me fired. They were trying to destroy my career because they couldn't control me anymore. Mr. Henderson, I began, my voice steady despite the rage shaking my hands. I can explain. You don't need to, Henderson said. He picked up the letter and dropped it in the shredder. I've seen your work, Mason. You're the most ethical man in this building. And I met your brother at the company picnic last year. I remember him trying to sell me NFT monkey pictures. He leaned forward. But Mason, if you need legal help, the company firm is at your disposal. Thank you, sir. I have it handled. Good, don't let them win. That letter was the final nail. If I had any lingering guilt, any small voice saying, "But they're your parents," it died in that office. Friday arrived, the rehearsal dinner. We had booked a private room at the Gilded Lily, an upscale steakhouse. It was intimate, just Emily's family, the bridesmaids and groomsmen, and us. I wore my best suit. I looked in the mirror. I looked tired but sharp. "Ready?" Emily asked. She looked beautiful in a cocktail dress. "Ready?" We arrived at the restaurant. The mood was festive. Judge Davis was telling jokes. Champagne was popping. For an hour, I almost forgot about the war. Then the doors swung open. They didn't just walk in. They made an entrance. Dad, Mom, and Caleb. They looked ragged. Mom wasn't wearing makeup. Dad's shirt was wrinkled. Caleb looked hungover. They had clearly dressed down to look like victims. "There he is," Caleb shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. The rich boy eating steak while his family starves. The room went dead silent. Judge Davis put down his glass. "Mason," Dad boomed using his patriarch voice, "we need to talk now." "We are having a private dinner," I said, not standing up. "You weren't invited." "Invited?" Mom sobbed dramatically. "We are your parents. You stole our refrigerator. You stole our furniture. You left us to die." "I took back my property," I said calmly. "After you stole $40,000. It was a loan," Dad yelled. He walked up to the table. "I am your father. I command you to write us a check right now. We have bills. The mortgage is due." "The mortgage?" I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a shark smile. "The mortgage?" I asked. "You're worried about the mortgage?" "Yes, the bank will take the house," Dad shouted. "And it will be your fault." I stood up. Then I picked up the manila envelope Elijah had placed on the table next to me. "Actually," I said, projecting my voice so the whole room could hear, "the bank won't take the house because the bank doesn't own the mortgage." "What?" Dad frowned. "I do," I said. I opened the envelope. "I pulled out the deed 5 years ago when you filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The bank foreclosed on you, remember?" Dad went pale. "I fixed that." "No, you didn't. I fixed it. I created MJR Holdings LLC. I bought the house from the bank for cash. I let you stay there. I told you I refinanced it for you, but I didn't refinance it in your name. I bought it is my house. It has been my house for 5 years." Gasps rippled through the room. Emily's mom whispered, "Oh my, you own it," Mom stammered. "Yes, and you are tenants. Tenants on a zero lease. A lease that has a specific clause about criminal activity and theft against the landlord." I pulled out the second document, the notice to quit. "Since you stole $40,000 from the landlord me, you are in breach of contract." I walked around the table. I shoved the papers into Caleb's chest. He grabbed them instinctively. "This is an eviction notice." I said, "You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. If you are not out by 6 p.m. tomorrow, the sheriff will remove you. You can't do this," Dad sputtered. "We're family." "No," I said coldly. "I'm the landlord. You're the bad tenants. Get out of my restaurant." The silence following my declaration was absolute. You could hear the hum of the wine fridge in the corner. My father looked at the papers in Caleb's hand, then back at me. His face cycled through colors, red, purple, then a ghostly white. The narrative he had built for 30 years, that he was the king of his castle, had just crumbled. He was a squatcher in his son's empire. "You're lying," Caleb spat. He threw the papers on the floor. "He's bluffing. He just wants to humiliate us." Caleb lunged forward. He grabbed a wine bottle from the table. "Give us the money, Mason. I know you have it." Judge Davis stood up. He was 60, but he moved with the authority of a man who sent people to prison for a living. "Son, put the bottle down." "Shut up, old man." Caleb swung the bottle. It didn't hit anyone, but it smashed against the edge of the table, spraying red wine over Emily's dress. Emily screamed. That was it. The last restraint inside me broke. I didn't punch him. I didn't tackle him. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small remote control. "Elijah," I said, "run the tape, Elijah." Sitting at the end of the table, connected his laptop to the restaurant's large presentation screen, usually used for corporate slideshows. The screen flickered to life. The image was crisp. Night vision. It was the living room of my house 3 weeks ago. On screen, Mom, Dad, and Caleb were sitting around the kitchen table. Audio plays from the speakers. "Dad, we can't tell him about the Porsche. He'll kill us." "Caleb, just take the money from the joint account, the wedding fund. It's sitting there." "Mom, that's for his wedding." "Caleb, Emily will be devastated." "Caleb, screw Emily. She's a stuck-up anyway." "Mason is a pushover. He won't do anything. He never does. Just tell him it was loan sharks. Make him feel like a hero saving his little brother." "Dad, you're right. He's soft. We'll take the money. If he complains, we'll guilt him. Tell him family comes first." "Caleb, exactly. He's our bank. That's all he is." The video ended. The screen went black. In the restaurant, nobody moved. The waitstaff had stopped serving. Emily was wiping wine off her dress, staring at the screen in horror. I looked at my parents. Mom had her hands over her mouth. Dad looked like he was having a stroke. "Soft," I repeated. "Pushover. A bank." I walked up to Caleb. He was trembling. The bottle fell from his hand and shattered on the floor. "I'm not soft, Caleb," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "I'm patient. There's a difference. Mason, please." "Mom, we didn't mean it. We were desperate. Desperate people ask for help." I said, "Thieves steal, liars manipulate." I turned to Judge Davis. "Sir, I apologize for the disruption. Is this sufficient evidence for a restraining order?" More than sufficient, the judge said, his voice like granite, and for criminal theft charges. I'll make the call myself. No, Dad yelled. You can't arrest us. We raised you and now I'm raising you. I said, I'm raising the standard. You are leaving now. Security guards from the restaurant finally arrived. They didn't need to use force. My former family was broken. They shuffled out, heads down, surrounded by the whispers of the room. Caleb paused at the door. He looked back at me. There was no smirk this time, only fear. Where are we supposed to go? He asked. I don't know, I said. Why don't you ask the crypto market? When the doors closed, Emily grabbed my hand. Her hand was sticky with wine, but she squeezed hard. Are you okay? She asked. I took a deep breath. For the first time in a week, the knot in my chest loosened. Yeah, I said. I think I am. I think I'm finally free. But it wasn't over. The evictions was tomorrow, and I knew they wouldn't go quietly. The next morning, Saturday, was officially eviction day. The legal deadline was 6 o'clock p.m. I didn't go to the house alone. I brought backup. Elijah was there as my legal counsel. Carter brought 2 of his biggest guys not to move furniture this time, but to ensure safety. And at Judge Davis's suggestion, a sheriff's deputy was parked across the street. I pulled up to the curb at 5 p.m. The house looked sad. The lawn was overgrown. I used to mow it every Saturday. The blinds were drawn. I walked up the driveway, had keys, obviously. It was my house, but I knocked. No answer. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Stale air, fear. Hello? I called out. Dad appeared in the hallway. He was wearing the same clothes as the night before. He looked 10 years older. You came, he said. I told you I would. You have 1 hour. We're not leaving, Mason, Dad said, trying to summon some bravado. This is my home. I built this family here. You lost this home, I said. You broke this family here. I stepped inside. The living room was still empty from my raid earlier in the week, but now boxes were scattered everywhere. They had started packing, but then stopped. Mom came out of the kitchen. She looked frail. Mason, please, where will we go? We have no money. You took the 40,000 back in furniture. I took 30,000 back, I corrected. You still owe me 10 plus legal fees. We can't be homeless, she cried. You won't be homeless, I said. I know for a fact that Aunt Sarah in Ohio offered to take you in years ago. You just didn't want to leave the suburbs. Ohio? Dad spat. I'm not moving to Ohio. Then find a motel. You have 1 hour. I signaled to Carter. He stepped onto the porch. Who are they? Dad asked. Movers, I said. Whatever isn't in your car by 6 p.m. goes on the curb. Is it going to rain tonight, Dad? I suggest you pack faster. That broke them. The reality of the physical force, the sheriff across the street, the cold detachment in my eyes. They realized the emotional blackmail ammunition was gone. The gun was empty. They started scrambling. It was pathetic to watch. Mom throwing clothes into garbage bags. Dad trying to carry his golf clubs, the ones he tried to sell but couldn't. Where is Caleb? I asked. In his room, Mom sniffled. He won't come out. I walked up the stairs. I walked to the door that used to be mine, then became Caleb's. When I moved out, I kicked the door open. Caleb was sitting on the floor. He was holding a lighter and a pile of papers. My old yearbooks, my certificates. If I can't have the house, he muttered. You can't have your memories, he flicked the lighter. I moved faster than I thought possible. I crossed the room and kicked the lighter out of his hand. It skittered across the floor. Get up, I snarled. Get out, you ruined my life, Caleb screamed. He stood up and swung at me, a clumsy, desperate haymaker. I dodged it easily. I grabbed his collar and slammed him against the wall. Not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to rattle his teeth. You ruined your own life, Caleb. I just stopped paying for the damage. I dragged him into the hallway. He stumbled down the stairs. By 5:55 p.m., their old sedan was packed to the bursting point. The trunk was tied shut with bungee cords. I stood on the porch and watched. Mom was crying in the passenger seat. Dad was in the driver's seat, staring straight ahead, refusing to look at me. Caleb was squeezed in the back, looking small. Dad started the engine, sputtered, then caught. He rolled down the window, just a crack. You're a hard man, Mason, he said. I had to be, I answered. You taught me that the world is expensive. I'm just balancing the ledger. He rolled the window up. They drove away. I watched the taillights disappear around the corner. The sheriff's deputy waved at me and drove off. Carter and Elijah came up to the porch. It's done, Elijah said. It's done, I repeated. I turned and looked at the empty house. It was just wood and drywall. It wasn't a home. Not anymore, but it was mine. Change the locks, I told Carter, and put it on the market on Monday. You're selling it? Elijah asked. Yeah, too many ghosts here. I'm going to take the money and buy a place with Emily. A place nobody else has ever lived in. I walked to my car. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Emily. Dinner is ready. Come home. Oh, that word finally sounded right. The Sunday morning after the eviction was the quietest morning of my life. I woke up in Emily's apartment, but for the first time in 5 years, my phone wasn't a ticking time bomb. There were no frantic texts about broken heaters. No missed calls about emergencies that always turned out to be Caleb's poor life choices. There was just sunlight hitting the duvet and the smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. I lay there for 20 minutes just listening to the silence. The strange how you get addicted to chaos. When you live in a war zone long enough, peace feels suspicious. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I kept waiting for a lawyer's letter or a police siren or a rock thrown through a window, but nothing came. I walked into the kitchen. Emily was there buttering toast. She looked up and smiled. It wasn't a worried smile. It was a we made it smile. How did you sleep? She asked. Like a baby, I lied. Actually, like a dead man. I don't think I moved for 8 hours. Good, she said. You needed it, Carter called. He's already changed the locks on the big house. He put the key in the lockbox for the realtor, the house. We didn't call it Mom and Dad's house anymore. We called it the asset. That's how I had to think about it to keep from falling apart. It wasn't the place where I learned to ride a bike or where I had my first kiss. It was an asset that had become a liability. And like any good risk analyst, I was liquidating it. Monday morning, I met with the realtor, a sharp woman named Mrs. Gable. She walked through the empty rooms, her heels clicking on the hardwood floors. It's very empty, she noted, looking at the spots where the furniture used to be. Staging helps, you know. No staging, I said firmly. I want it sold as is. Price it to move. I want it gone in 30 days. The market is hot, Mason. But are you sure? You could get 10% more if we painted and fixed the landscaping. I don't care about the 10%. I told her I care about the 0% chance of me ever walking through that front door again. Sell it. She listed it on Tuesday. By Thursday, we had a bidding war. Turns out a solid house in a good school district is worth a lot, even with bad vibes. I accepted an offer that was $20,000 over the asking price. It was an all-cash offer from a young couple moving from the city. When I signed the closing papers 2 weeks later, I stared at the check. It was a lot of money. It was enough to repay the wedding fund 10 times over. It was enough to buy a new house outright. I sat in my car in the title company parking lot and stared at that check. This was my inheritance. I realized I wasn't waiting for my parents to die to inherit their legacy. I had taken it now to prevent them from squandering it on gambling debts and hush money. I took a picture of the check. I almost texted it to my dad. I almost typed, "See, this is what you lost." But I didn't. I deleted the photo. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but moving on is a dish best served in silence. I deposited the check into a new account, but with no joint access, no history, just my name and Emily's name. With the house sold and the family effectively dissolved, the path was finally clear for the wedding. We didn't downgrade. In fact, we upgraded. We kept the date, but we changed the venue. We moved it from the hotel ballroom to a private estate on the cliffs overlooking the ocean. I wanted open air. I wanted to see the horizon. I wanted to feel small against the vastness of the world, to remind myself that my family drama was just a speck of dust in the grand scheme of things. The planning process was different this time. Before, every decision was filtered through what will Mom think or will Caleb be bored. Now the questions were simple. Do we like this beef or fish? The caterer asked. Both, I said. And an open bar, top shelf. The guest list was the only thing that shrank. We cut 40 people. We cut every distant cousin who had ever guilt-tripped me. We cut the neighbors who sided with my parents. We cut the family friends who had enabled Caleb's behavior for years. The resulting list was tight. 70 people, the chosen family. The day of the wedding was perfect. And I don't use that word lightly. In my line of work, perfect is a statistical impossibility, but this was close. The sky was a piercing blue. The ocean crashed against the rocks below, providing a rhythm that calmed my nerves. I stood at the altar adjusting my cufflinks, their gold, a gift from Elijah. Elijah stood next to me as my best man. He leaned in. You good? I'm good, I said. They're not coming, he whispered, answering the question I hadn't asked. I have security at the gate. Carter has a guy in the parking lot. It's a fortress, Mason. Thanks, Eli. Then the music started. Everyone stood up. I looked down the aisle. Usually this is the part where the groom looks for the bride. But for a split second, my eyes darted to the front row on the left, the parents' row. It was empty. Well, not empty. My colleagues were there. Mr. Henderson, my boss, was sitting there. Carter was there. But the seats reserved for father of the groom and mother of the groom were filled by people who weren't blood relations. For a second, just a microsecond, I felt a sharp pang in my chest. It wasn't regret, it was grief. I was grieving the parents I wished I had. I was grieving the fantasy of the proud father and the weeping mother. I had to accept that those people didn't exist. The people who existed were a landlord and a thief, and they were currently living in a motel 3 towns over. Then I saw Emily. She stepped out, holding on to Judge Davis's arm. All the grief vanished. She was walking toward me, and she looked like victory. She looked like the future. She looked like the only family I would ever need. When they reached the altar, Judge Davis took Emily's hand and placed it in mine. But he didn't step back immediately. He put a hand on my shoulder. He squeezed it, a firm, masculine, fatherly squeeze. Take care of her, son, he said. I will. The ceremony was short. We wrote our own vows. I, Mason, I said, my voice shaking slightly. Promise to build a home with you that is safe. I promise that our resources will always be for us. I promise that I will never light myself on fire to keep someone else warm unless that someone is you or our children. I promise that loyalty is earned, not inherited. And I promise that from this day forward you are my primary obligation. People cried. They thought it was poetic. Emily knew it was a declaration of independence. The reception was a blur of joy. We danced, we ate steak, we drank expensive champagne. At one point around 1000 p.m., I stepped away from the dance floor to get some air. I walked to the edge of the terrace and looked out at the dark ocean. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I had unblocked them for the day just in case of a genuine medical emergency. Old habits die hard. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize, but I knew the voice immediately. Caleb, nice photos on Instagram. Hope you're happy. Dad's blood pressure is up again. Thanks for that. I stared at the screen. The audacity. Even in exile, they tried to send little missiles of guilt. I didn't get angry. I didn't feel the urge to explain or defend myself. I just felt bored. It was such a boring, predictable tactic. I hit delete. Then I blocked the number. Hey. A soft voice came from behind me. It was Emily. She wrapped her arms around my waist. Hiding. Just checking the perimeter, I joked. The perimeter is secure, she said. Come dance with your wife, my wife. We flew to Italy for the honeymoon. 2 weeks, no phones, no emails. We ate pasta, drank wine, and walked through ancient ruins. It was during a walk in Pompeii that the realization truly hit me. We were looking at the plaster casts of the victims, frozen in time, trapped by the ash. They didn't know it was coming, Emily whispered. 1 minute they were cooking dinner. The next minute the mountain exploded. My family knew, I said suddenly. That's the difference. They saw the smoke for years, I warned them. I told them the eruption was coming if they didn't stop spending my money. They just didn't believe the volcano would actually blow. And now you're out of the blast zone, she said. When we came back to the States, we didn't go back to Emily's apartment. We went house hunting. With the money from the sale of the asset and our combined savings, our budget was substantial. But I didn't want a mansion. I didn't want a place to show off. I wanted a fortress of solitude. We found it in a quiet neighborhood about 30 minutes from my parents' old town. It was a mid-century modern house with big windows and a lot of trees. It needed work, but good work. It needed a new kitchen, new floors. It needs a lot of love. The realtor said, I have a lot of love to give, I said, now that I'm not wasting it. Buying that house felt different. When I bought my parents' house, I felt a heavy burden of duty. I felt like I was buying their approval. Buying this house felt like planting a flag. We signed the papers, we moved in. The first night in our new home, we sat on the floor of the empty living room eating pizza. We need furniture, Emily said, looking around. I know a guy, I laughed. I hear he has a warehouse full of slightly used high-end furniture that he repossessed from some bad tenants. We laughed. It was a dark joke, but we could laugh about it now. Seriously though, I said, let's buy new stuff. I don't want the old couch. It has Caleb's bad jugu on it. Let's sell the repossession stash and start fresh. Agreed. Life settled into a rhythm. I worked, Emily worked, we cooked dinner, we had friends over, normal, boring, beautiful life. But the most shocking change wasn't the house, it was my bank account. For years, I made a high salary, but I always felt broke. There was always a loan for Dad, a bailout for Caleb, a gift for Mom. Look at this. We can start a college fund for kids we don't even have yet. It's amazing what happens when we plug the leak. She said it wasn't me. And it was a headline. I was finally blaming something in the past. But I knew the story wasn't completely over. Physics says that for every action, there's a reaction. And biology says that a parasite, when detached from its host, gets desperate. I kept waiting for them to show up at my door. They did. I was screaming at them. And Judge Davis had made sure the local police knew exactly what was going on. Instead, silence until 6 months later. 6 months. That's how long it takes for a human life to completely reconfigure itself. In 6 months, the cells in your liver regenerate. In 6 months, you can train for a marathon. And in 6 months, you can turn a tragedy into a tale. It was a Tuesday again. Always Tuesdays. I was at the grocery store. Not the one where my living was, but a bit closer to my office. I was picking up ingredients for dinner. Emily was craving lasagna. I turned the corner into the produce aisle and I froze. There, standing by the entrance, wearing a gray uniform that was slightly too big for him, was my father. He wasn't shopping, he was working. He was standing guard near the carts, checking receipts as people left. He looked thinner. His hair was whiter. The arrogance that used to rule. He looked tired. He looked like an old man trying to stand straight on bad knees. I pulled my cart back behind a display of apples. My heart hammered against my ribs. I watched him. I saw a customer, a young woman in a rush, shove a receipt at him without making eye contact. He took it, checked it, and mumbled, "Have a nice day." She didn't answer. She just walked out. My father, the man who sat at the head of the table and demanded tribute. The man who told me I was lucky to be his son. The man who stole $40,000 from me without blinking. He was now checking receipts for minimum wage. I felt a wave of emotion wash over me, but it wasn't anger anymore. And it wasn't satisfaction either. I thought I would feel triumphant seeing him brought low. I thought I would want to walk up to him, flash my platinum card, and laugh, but I didn't. I just felt pity, deep, profound pity. He had had everything. A paid-off house, a beautiful son, a comfortable retirement, and he threw it all away to protect the ego of a gambling addict. I watched him for another minute. I saw him rub his lower back. I saw him check his cheap watch. I could have walked up to him. I could have said no. I could have handed him 20. He would tell me he was really trying this time. I turned my card around. I walked to the other end of the store and used the self-checkout. I went to I drove home in silence. When I walked in, Emily was on the sofa holding a piece of paper. She looked pale. "What's wrong?" I asked, dropping the bags. "Is it your parents?" "No," she said. She held up the paper. "It wasn't me. It was my mother." I went to the doctor and to dentist, and Mason were having a baby. The world stopped spinning. The image of my father in the grocery store vanished, replaced by the image of a tiny, unseen man. I dropped to my knees in front of her. "Are you serious?" "Yes, 8 weeks." I buried my face in her lap. I cried. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I cried because I was happy, yes, but I also cried because I was terrified. "I don't know how to be a father," I whispered. "Look at my role model. Look at what I come from." Emily ran her fingers through my hair. "You know exactly how to be a father, Mason. You just look at what Robert did and you do the exact opposite." We sat there for a long time, and in that quiet moment, I made a vow to this unborn child. "I will never treat you like a bank account. I will never make you pay for my mistakes. I will never sacrifice you to save myself." A week later, a letter arrived at my office. It had no return address, but I recognized the handwriting. It was shaky, jagged. I sat at my desk and stared at it for an hour before opening it. It was from Dad. "Mason, I know you probably won't read this. I know you blocked our numbers. I'm writing this on my break at work. Yes, I'm working at the supermarket. We are living in a small apartment on 4th Street. It has roaches, but it's a roof. Your mother is cleaning houses part-time. It's hard on her arthritis, but we have to eat. Caleb is gone. He took the car and left 2 months ago. He said he was going to Vegas to win it all back. We haven't heard from him since. The police came looking for him about the Porsche thing, but he was already gone. We don't know if he's dead or alive. I'm not writing to ask for money. I know that well is dry. I'm writing because I miss my son, not the banker, the son. I realize something standing at the door greeting people who ignore me. I realize that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn, and I lost yours. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I know I messed up. I bet on the wrong horse and I lost the farm. Take care of Emily. I hope you have a better life than the one I gave you." Dad, I read the letter twice. I bet on the wrong horse. Even in his apology, he saw us as horses in a race. Caleb was the high-risk, high-reward bet. I was the workhorse. He bet the farm on Caleb, and Caleb ran off to Vegas. I folded the letter. A part of me wanted to drive to 4th Street to save them from the roaches, to pay their rent for a year. I could afford it easily now. But then I remembered the wedding fund. I remembered the insufficient funds at the bridal shop. I remembered Caleb laughing at me. If I saved them now, they would never learn. They were finally at 60 years old, learning the lesson of cause and effect. They were finally becoming adults. To intervene now would be to rob them of that growth. I opened my desk drawer. I had a file labeled past. I dropped the letter in there. I didn't reply. I went home to my pregnant wife, cooked lasagna. We talked about baby names. "If it's a boy," Emily said. "What do you think about Ethan?" "I like it," I said. "Strong, steady." "Not Robert?" she asked gently. "No," I said, "definitely not Robert." Life went on. The baby grew. My bank account grew. My happiness grew. I heard through the grapevine, Aunt Sarah again, that Caleb had been arrested in Nevada for check fraud. He was looking at 3 to 5 years. Dad and Mom couldn't afford a lawyer, so he was using a public defender. He was going to prison. It was a tragedy, a waste of a life. But it wasn't my tragedy. I had built a wall. Not a wall of stone, but a wall of boundaries. On one side was chaos, entitlement, and destruction. On my side was peace, responsibility, and love. I stood in the nursery. We had just finished painting. It was a soft yellow. The crib was assembled. I did it myself. No movers this time. I put my hand on the railing of the crib. "You're safe here," I whispered to the empty room. "You're safe." And I realized finally that the eviction wasn't just about kicking them out of a house. It was about evicting the guilt from my soul. It was about evicting the idea that I existed to serve them. I had taken my office back, I had taken my money back, but most importantly, I had taken my life back. So that's my story. It's heavy, I know, but if you're still here listening, it means you understand something fundamental about family and finance. Here is the hard truth I learned, and it's the lesson I want to leave you with. No is a complete sentence, and financial abuse is still abuse, even if it comes from your parents. Many of us are raised with the idea that we owe our parents everything. We are taught that family helps family no matter what. But there is a line between helping and enabling. Helping is pulling someone up when they fall. Enabling is lying down so they can walk all over you to avoid the mud. My parents didn't need my money to survive. They needed it to avoid the consequences of their bad parenting. By cutting them off, I didn't destroy them. I actually gave them the only chance they ever had to become responsible adults. It was painful, yes, but it was necessary. You cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You have to secure your own oxygen mask first. If you are in a situation where you're being drained financially or emotionally by family, remember my empty house. Sometimes you have to clear everything out to see what's actually real. I want to hear from you now. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with a family member over money? Was it the hardest thing you ever did? Or maybe you just agree that boundaries are essential. Leave a comment below with your story, or just type good if you agree that Mason made the right call. Your comments help more people find the story and maybe, just maybe, give someone else the courage to serve their own eviction notice to a toxic situation. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves and protect your peace.